My boss came to my house for New Year's dinner, but my parents mistook him for my blind date. He cornered me in my room, his voice ice cold. Company policy, no dating. Did you forget? January 20. My mom dragged me out of bed at the crack of dawn and shoved me into the bathroom. You have 30 minutes to shower, get dressed, and put on makeup. Your future husband is arriving soon. Future husband? I soaked in the bathtub for nearly half an hour before it hit me. My mom had arranged a blind date for today. According to her, he was a triple threat: good-looking, smart, and wealthy. Suddenly, I heard voices outside. He must have arrived. Even through 2 doors, I could hear my mom's booming laughter. I slowly climbed out of the tub and wrapped myself in a towel. Then, the bedroom door opened. Without thinking, I assumed it was Mom coming to rush me. I walked out of the bathroom in my towel. I'm coming. No need to. The word rush died in my throat. It wasn't my mom. It was my nearly 30-year-old, devastatingly handsome boss, Ethan Walker. We jokingly called him Walker at work, which was funny since my last name was Parker, almost like we were meant to be paired together. The bedroom door was closed. Ethan and I stared at each other. Mr. Walker. I clutched my towel tighter, tongue-tied. He responded coolly, then slowly walked toward me. 1 step, 2 steps. He stopped in front of me and placed his hand against the bathroom door frame, trapping me against the wall. Company policy, no dating. Did you forget? My heart pounded violently. Not because I was afraid of losing my job, but because my boss was standing way too close, making me panic. I forced myself to stay calm and pushed him back slightly. You're too close. I'm afraid if I look up, I might accidentally kiss you. Ethan kept staring at me. Don't change the subject. I was quiet for a moment. I didn't forget. Then I added quietly, I'm not dating anyone. Up until the second he trapped me against the bathroom door, I was still single. Right. Ethan's lips curved slightly, though his eyes held no warmth. You're not dating, you went straight to blind dates. Mr. Walker, this was just to appease my mom. I explained clearly, but Ethan was relentless, threatening to fire me if I started dating. I couldn't help but argue back. Mr. Walker, most companies just ban office romances. Why does our company control our personal lives too? Ethan glanced at me and replied matter-of-factly, because I pay your salary. Fair enough. The person who signs the paychecks is always right. Although this company policy was unreasonable, we all put up with it because Ethan paid better than industry standard. Mr. Walker, why are you at my house on New Year's Day? I asked with an awkward smile, trying to change the subject. Ethan glanced at me. New Year's visit. January 20 seemed a bit late for New Year's visits. Plus, this guy had a stone-cold expression, less like visiting, more like conducting an inspection. I tugged at my towel, blushing. Could you wait in the living room? I'll get dressed and be right out. Ethan's gaze followed my hand downward and seemed to smirk slightly. All right. He withdrew his gaze and obediently left the room. I sighed in relief, but before changing clothes, I quickly texted my coworker Hannah about this surreal morning experience. Hannah's reply came fast. Girl, Ethan's no dating rule only applies to you. I thought everyone except you knew that. Ethan's no dating rule only applied to me? That single sentence hit me like lightning. I stared at my phone in shock until Mom's impatient voice from outside snapped me back to reality. I quickly changed clothes and went out. In the living room, Ethan sat on the sofa with my parents flanking him. He showed no signs of panic, answering every question calmly. He even leisurely sipped his tea, completely composed. I slowly walked over, but the more I listened, the more something seemed off. My parents seemed to think he was my blind date, but Ethan didn't correct them. When my parents asked about his situation, he honestly answered that he owned a company, just didn't mention the company name. He said the company had dozens of employees, just didn't mention that one of them was me. My parents grew more delighted the more they heard. They were satisfied with everything about Ethan. Dad even extended the topic to names. Even your names match perfectly, Ethan Walker and Emma Parker. Perfect pair. When it came to names, my parents finally noticed something was off. Walker? Mom pushed her reading glasses up in confusion. Mrs. Chen said his last name was Anderson. My heart tightened, and I instinctively looked at Ethan, but he remained calm. Ma'am, He was interrupted by knocking at the door. I rushed to answer it. When I opened the door, I saw a less than appealing face. I was stunned. Can I help you? He looked me up and down, his gaze lingering on my chest area for several seconds before smiling. Hi, I'm here for the blind date Mrs. Chen arranged. I felt a headache coming on. Mrs. Chen had been dishonest. This wasn't the triple threat she'd described. He was clearly a creepy guy. I don't believe in judging by appearances, but the man hadn't even washed his hair, was about my height, and I could see dandruff when he looked down. His white shirt had visible food stains. I was silent for a few seconds, then quickly pulled him outside. I dragged him to the elevator and pressed the down button. Sorry, buddy, I have a boyfriend. My parents didn't know this was a misunderstanding. Before he could get angry, I slipped him $100. Thanks for coming. This is for your trouble. After taking the money, his expression immediately brightened. No problem, I'll be going then. He cheerfully entered the elevator. I sighed in relief and hurried back home. Then, under Ethan's slightly surprised gaze, I walked over and intimately wrapped my arms around his neck in front of my parents. I turned to my parents. Mom, Dad, I have to confess, we fell in love at first sight and just got engaged in the bedroom. I was clearly having a mental breakdown. After being shocked by Dandruff Guy, I decided to use Ethan to continue the charade and keep my parents satisfied. However, after a moment of silence, Mom pushed her reading glasses up and said leisurely, Ethan just told us he's actually your boss. Busted. I was stuck between a rock and a hard place and looked at Ethan. But my boss, who had remained completely composed even when my parents were grilling him, now seemed slightly flustered, especially his earlobes, which were noticeably red. While my parents pretended to look away, Ethan whispered through gritted teeth in my ear, Your parents are here. Don't make me lose control. Lose control? Did he mean what I think he meant? The living room fell silent with all four of us. Mom smiled as she looked at Ethan and broke the silence first. Ethan, are you married? No. Ethan nodded slightly, looking almost endearingly obedient. Do you have a girlfriend? Hearing this question, I got nervous too and sneakily glanced at Ethan. Whether Ethan was single had always been a mystery. On one hand, beautiful women often came to the office looking for him, and Ethan seemed to welcome them all. On the other hand, it was always different women each time. At the question, Ethan also glanced at me, then quickly looked away. No, ma'am. I've been single for many years. Mom's face immediately lit up. That's wonderful. Our Emma is single too. She pushed me forward toward Ethan. Ethan, what do you think of our Emma? Ethan glanced at me casually. When our eyes met, I got so nervous my legs went weak. I'd been crushing on my boss for so long without showing the slightest hint at work, and now Mom was making it obvious. I was nervous. However, Ethan remained silent on this question. 1 second. 2 seconds. After several seconds, Ethan suddenly looked at me and smiled. Emma's pretty cute. Although this pretty cute response wasn't what I was hoping for. He called me Emma. Mom smiled as she played matchmaker. Ethan, you and Emma are so perfect together. Your names match. You look good together. You're tall. Emma's short. You're thin. Emma's. Fuller. Perfect compliments. Me. Int 2 indication of the most em. Mom? That was great. Please don't say more. Fortunately, Mom didn't continue that topic. Seeing Ethan didn't respond, she enthusiastically invited him to stay for lunch and dragged Dad out to buy groceries. Only when I heard the door close did I relax. Mr. Walker. I looked at him with an awkward smile. When my parents try to set us up again, just ignore them. Stay for lunch though. Mom's sweet and sour ribs are incredible. Ethan didn't respond but picked up his teacup for a sip. Emma. Yes? Suddenly, being called by name, I instinctively sat up straight, waiting for him to continue. I watched Ethan look me up and down, then smirk slightly. You look good without makeup. Huh? I was stunned, then heard him continue. So from now on, stop wearing that smoky eye makeup to work. It's not like I enjoy doing panda eyes every day. I only started the smoky look because I once heard him compliment some girl's smoky makeup. After this brief exchange, the atmosphere grew quiet again. Ethan and I sat side by side on the sofa. He drank tea, I drank water, both silent. Suddenly, my phone on the coffee table vibrated. I picked it up and immediately got a headache. It was from my persistent admirer and college classmate, Sam Martinez. Funny enough, with our 3 names, we could practically stage our own version of a love triangle. Sam's text was brief and CEO-like. I'm back in town, coming to wish your parents a happy new year. Everyone else visits on New Year's Day or the 2nd. Did he and Ethan coordinate to both visit on January 20th? I was composing a refusal when knocking sounded at the door. I opened it to see Sam's handsome but slightly dopey face. He carried bags full of items from fruit to rice, alcohol, and cigarettes. Emma, where are your parents? He familiarly set down his bags and bent to change shoes. I came straight here after getting back from my hometown to wish them Happy New Year. I had a massive headache. Ethan was already unpredictable, and if he saw Sam and mistook him for my boyfriend, he'd probably threaten to fire me again. But before I could say anything, I turned to see Ethan standing behind me. He watched Sam silently, slightly frowning. Sam, the idiot, happily changed into slippers. Probably noticing men's slippers in his peripheral vision, he suddenly dropped to his knees. Happy New Year, sir. He was about to bow deeply. Fortunately, I was quick enough to stop him. Dude, look at who you're bowing to first. This guy performed elaborate New Year's bows for my parents every year. When I asked why, he said it was customary in his region to give formal bows to in-laws during New Year. Another reason was the generous red envelopes my parents gave him annually. Sam looked up and stared at Ethan blankly. His expression changed several times before his face went pale. Emma, he is? I looked back at Ethan and answered quietly. My boss. Sam's expression immediately relaxed. Oh, Emma's boss. He quickly stepped forward, extending his hand to Ethan. Pleasure to meet you. Emma always talks about how young and accomplished her boss is, and how well he treats her. However, Ethan maintained his hands in pockets pose and didn't extend his hand. The atmosphere grew awkward. I glanced at Ethan and tentatively called, Mr. Walker. Ethan glanced at me, his expression still cold, but did extend his hand for a brief handshake with Sam. Sam acted like the man of the house, unfazed by Ethan's coldness, cheerfully leading him back to the sofa. Ethan sipped his tea and asked in a low voice, And you are? Sam looked at me and smiled warmly. I'm Emma's future husband. I spit my tea all over his face. Future husband, my ass. Thanks a lot. Getting sprayed with tea, Sam didn't get angry but laughingly wiped his face with the back of his hand. Of course, Emma hasn't agreed yet. In my peripheral vision, Ethan raised an eyebrow. She won't agree. Why not? Sam's smile froze on his face. He looked rather honest with his handsome but slightly dopey expression. Ethan held his teacup and didn't even look at him. Our company doesn't allow dating. Violators get fired. Sam was quiet for a few seconds, then looked at me carefully and said quietly but confidently, "Fire her then. If Emma's with me, I can support her." Ethan raised an eyebrow, sipped his tea, and said nothing. Just as the atmosphere grew tense, my parents returned from grocery shopping. Seeing Sam on the sofa, they both paused. However, Sam was as enthusiastic as always, rushing over to take the groceries from my parents. "Uncle, Aunt, you're too kind. I'm not a guest, you didn't need to buy so much." Mom quickly glanced at Ethan, awkwardly smiling at Sam without speaking. Seeing the awkward atmosphere there, I was about to go over when someone grabbed my wrist. It was Ethan. He pulled slightly, and I lost my balance, falling into his embrace. He caught my waist and gently pushed me away, whispering in my ear, "Does he come here often?" I turned my head away, my face burning. Not really, just during holidays. My blush was from that momentary contact my waist, where he'd touched, felt warm, the heat spreading through my thin clothing. I didn't have much dating experience, and this kind of blush-inducing physical contact was almost non-existent for me. I'm not sure if it was my imagination, but when I denied it, Ethan's furrowed brow seemed to relax slightly. I sighed in relief and quickly walked over to my parents because Sam had already set the groceries in the kitchen and was patting his knees, preparing for his New Year's bow. My parents nervously grabbed his arms. "Son, just saying Happy New Year is fine. Don't make such a big fuss." Sam looked stubborn and was about to insist when I pulled him away. Knowing his personality after all these years, I whispered persuasively, "Acting like this will make my boss think our family is bullying you. If my boss gets a bad impression of me, he might dock my pay." Hearing this, Sam blinked and silently agreed. This guy had a pretty face and high IQ, but terrible EQ. He immediately believed my lame excuse. After a moment's silence, Sam grabbed an apron from the wall and headed to the kitchen. "Uncle, Aunt, go chat with Emma's boss. I'll cook today. My culinary skills have improved recently." Mom tried to refuse, going into the kitchen several times, but he kept pushing her out. Finally, my parents and I sat in the living room chatting with Ethan while Sam cooked alone in the kitchen. Looking at Sam's busy figure in the kitchen, I felt somewhat guilty. This fool probably didn't know he was enthusiastically cooking for his rival. After hesitating for a while, I got up and went to the kitchen while my parents were talking with Ethan. "Need help?" Sam turned around and smiled at me. He was handling a fish that wasn't quite dead yet. The tail suddenly thrashed, startling Sam into screaming and throwing the fish into the oil pan. Hot oil splattered everywhere, some drops landing on my arm. Before I could dodge, someone pulled me to safety. It was Ethan, who had appeared out of nowhere. He could have simply pulled me away, but instead, he created a romantic drama scene, turning and holding me in his arms, using his body to shield me from the splattering oil. Although his actions seemed a bit theatrical, I still felt my heart skip a beat. Meanwhile, Sam frantically covered the pan and turned to see us in shock. "Mr. Walker." After a moment of silence, he spoke slowly. "Thank you for protecting Emma, but could you please move your hand?" He pointed uncomfortably at my waist, looking somewhat hurt. Only then did I realize Ethan's hand was loosely resting on my waist in an intimate position. Blushing, I tried to push him away, but he wouldn't budge. "Emma." This man seemed to have reached his limit. In front of Sam, he cornered me against the wall. "You like this type?" I blinked, thinking I saw a hint of jealousy in his eyes. Suddenly remembering Hannah's message, my brain short-circuited, and I looked up at him instead of answering his question. Ethan, you're so nervous. Do you like me? Ethan fell silent. The moment I said those words, his ears gradually turned red. After a full 10 seconds, Ethan finally spoke. He released his hand from my waist, frowning slightly, denying it bluntly. No. Taking a step back, his voice was low. I just don't want you to let dating interfere with work. Just that. So, I was being presumptuous. For some reason, after saying this, Ethan's frown deepened. I felt embarrassed and a bit sad, not knowing what to say, so I just laughed awkwardly. Hannah and the others were joking. I knew you wouldn't. After saying this, I quickly walked around him to Sam's side, sniffling and saying dully, "The fish is burning." "Oh." Sam frantically plated the fish. It was black on one side, and a terrible burnt smell filled the air, just like my heart. I'm not sure if it was my imagination, but I seemed to hear a soft sigh from Ethan behind me. Very soft, so soft that I wondered if I imagined it. The fish was ruined. Sam silently threw it in the trash, then cleaned the pan while I chopped vegetables nearby. Ethan was soon called back to the living room by my parents for conversation. After all, he was my boss, and they wouldn't make him help in the kitchen. After Ethan left, the kitchen fell silent. It wasn't until Sam started cooking again, adding onions to the pan, that he suddenly asked quietly, "Emma, do you like your boss?" I paused, almost instinctively glancing toward the living room. Was it that obvious? Many people at the company had crushes on Ethan. Young, successful, and handsome men were sought after everywhere. I continued chopping vegetables and answered quietly, "No, he's my boss." The onions got slightly burnt as Sam frantically added vegetables to the pan. After a long while, he said quietly, "Actually, your boss seems pretty good." I was somewhat surprised. For years, Sam had been my persistent admirer. He was straightforward and never held back his feelings. Everyone knew he liked me. I looked up at him and saw Sam adding various seasonings to the pan, accidentally glancing up to catch his eye. I noticed his eyes were red. I opened my mouth but didn't know what to say. During dinner, the atmosphere was strangely awkward. My parents were busy attending to both Ethan and Sam. The two men were somewhat quiet and barely anyone touched their chopsticks, mainly because the food was absolutely terrible. Each dish was awful in its own way, either too salty, too sweet, or too much soy sauce, making it black as tar. Especially the bitter melon and pork rib soup, which was mostly bitter melon. I took one sip and thought it was more bitter than my failed crush on Ethan. We hadn't been eating long when Ethan suddenly got a phone call and left. Before leaving, he politely said goodbye to my parents. I walked him to the door, and he looked down at me with a hesitant expression. After a moment, he looked away with a frown. "I'm leaving." I nodded numbly, only managing to say, "Drive safely." After Ethan left, Sam seemed to return to normal, sitting at the dinner table telling my parents funny stories from his hometown trip, making them laugh heartily. I stood at the door watching from afar, inexplicably thinking of Ethan's slightly furrowed brow. "No, I just don't want you to let dating interfere with work." The next morning, I woke up with dark circles under my eyes. January 3rd, our company was back in business. Thinking about yesterday's kitchen conversation, I suddenly realized I might have gotten Hannah in trouble by mentioning her. However, I worried all morning for nothing. Not only did Ethan not give Hannah trouble, but she actually got promoted and a raise. The reason was absurd. Hannah came to work on time every day last year and had a good work attitude. Company colleagues. Everyone came to work on time, otherwise we'd get docked pay. While everyone was confused, I suddenly remembered yesterday's kitchen conversation. Could it be Ethan was reacting to my casual mention that Hannah said he liked me? But he clearly denied it yesterday. I couldn't help overthinking. But I didn't dare think too deeply, afraid of being presumptuous again. That scene in the kitchen when Ethan frowned and said he was just worried about work interference was still vivid in my memory. However, when I went to the break room for coffee that morning, Hannah cornered me. "Spill it." She hooked her arm around my neck, lowering her voice. "Did you put in a good word for me with the boss?" Thinking of Ethan made my heart tighten. "No way, I don't have that kind of influence," I said glumly. "Please." She released me and gave my waist a light push. Sis has been around the block enough times to recognize when a guy like Ethan likes someone. She couldn't finish the word "you." Hannah froze, staring ahead. I followed her gaze. It was Ethan. He stood in the break room doorway with an empty cup, watching us both. He moved so quietly, I had no idea when he'd appeared. Hannah reacted quickly, pushing me forward with an awkward smile and a quick "good morning, boss" before hurrying past Ethan and escaping. I stumbled a few steps and ended up right in front of Ethan. He reached out and steadied my arm. I suspected Hannah did that on purpose. The atmosphere was awkward. I glanced at his empty cup and made conversation. "Boss, making coffee?" "Yes." He handed me his coffee mug. "Strong. I like it bitter." Then he turned and left. I stood there for 2 seconds, then, like a loyal dog, ran to make coffee and carefully carried it to Ethan's office. The door was ajar. I pushed it open with the coffee cup. Ethan was reading a document, looking serious and focused. The sunlight was perfect outside, and I was momentarily mesmerized. Snapping back to reality, I walked to his desk and set down the cup. "Boss, your coffee." Ethan looked up at me. "Thanks." Then he picked up the cup and blew on it. "Stay late tonight for overtime." "Overtime?" Before I could ask, he continued. "Take over the project Ryan's been handling. I need a proposal tonight." After speaking, Ethan sipped his coffee, but his brow immediately furrowed. "I'll stay late too. Work overtime with you." "Work overtime together?" I couldn't help asking quietly. "Just the two of us?" Ethan looked up at me. When our eyes met, I felt a bit shy, wondering if he could see through my inexplicable excitement. After a few seconds, Ethan nodded. "Yes." Seeing him return to his documents, I tactfully left. However, as I closed the door, I seemed to hear him mutter under his breath, "This is way too bitter." That evening, after work hours, watching my colleagues eagerly pack up to leave, for the first time in my life, I hoped I could start overtime soon. 10 minutes later, the office was empty except for me and Ethan in his office. Our company was famous for lightning-fast departures. Everyone arrived right on time and escaped within 5 minutes of closing. However, I sat at my computer for nearly half an hour without Ethan emerging from his office. This was completely different from what I'd imagined. Just as I was wondering whether to find an excuse to go see him, someone called my name. "Emma!" It came from the entrance. I turned to see. "Sam? How did you get here?" He carried 2 thermal lunch boxes in one hand and a plastic bag in the other. Through the transparent bag, it looked like several cans of beer. He raised the plastic bag and smiled. "Saw your social media post about working late. Thought you might be hungry, so I brought you dinner." "What about the alcohol?" Seeing me stare at the beer bag, he touched his nose. "The beer's for me. I made some good drinking snacks today." I came to my senses and realized that this afternoon, unable to contain myself, I'd posted a complaint about working overtime on social media. But really, I was secretly thrilled about having a chance to be alone with my crush. Looking at Sam's sincere and slightly dopey smile, I sighed and didn't send him away. However, before I could speak, Ethan's office door suddenly opened. After being silent this whole time, Ethan emerged 3 minutes after Sam appeared. Ethan walked to my desk and glanced at the thermal boxes Sam brought. "What did you make?" Sam paused but answered honestly. Stir-fried chicken gizzards, braised intestines, spicy squid tentacles. Sure enough, all drinking food. After hearing this, Ethan raised an eyebrow, pulled over a chair from the neighboring desk, sat down at my desk, and looked at Sam. I'm hungry too. Mind if I join? Hope you don't mind. Sam stared at me, then touched his nose and smiled sheepishly. I don't mind. You're Emma's boss. Forget sharing this food. I'd cook fresh dishes on the spot if you wanted. Sam opened the thermal containers. One held stir-fried chicken gizzards and braised intestines. The other held white rice and spicy squid tentacles. When opened, the aroma was incredible. Sam really hadn't been exaggerating about his improved cooking skills. Coincidentally or not, Ethan sat between Sam and me. We didn't have enough chopsticks, so Sam volunteered to go to the convenience store downstairs for disposable ones. The three of us ate the boxed meal in front of us, the atmosphere strangely quiet. After a few bites, Sam opened a beer and took several gulps, then let out a satisfied burp. After a moment of silence, he picked up 2 more beers and offered them to Ethan and me. Join me? I was about to refuse since I still had to work on the proposal when I saw Ethan accept his. He took both beers and handed me one, asking the same question as Sam. Join me? I stared at him and quickly accepted. I have to say, alcohol is truly magical. Half a can of beer naturally wouldn't make anyone drunk, but the atmosphere unconsciously relaxed. Sam checked his watch and suddenly exclaimed, "The World Cup started." He turned to Ethan. "Boss, can we use your office TV?" He pointed at the TV on the wall. Ethan sipped his beer. "Sure." Sam cheered, moved his chair in front of us, and happily started watching the World Cup. Ethan and I sat behind him, quietly drinking. 3 cans of beer were quickly finished between Ethan and me. Ethan sent someone a text, and soon the convenience store owner downstairs delivered many ice-cold beers and various drinking snacks. I have a low alcohol tolerance and was getting dizzy by the 3rd can. Sam sat in front, drinking while focused on the World Cup, occasionally cheering or sighing in disappointment. Ethan also watched occasionally while sipping his beer. Maybe it was the alcohol, but I grew bolder, propping my chin on one hand and quietly studying Ethan's profile. So handsome. Despite knowing him for so long, I was still amazed by that face. I held my beer can and took a sip, my gaze slowly tracing his features downward. Whether it was the alcohol or not, I felt parched, especially when my gaze landed on his Adam's apple. Ethan took a drink, his Adam's apple bobbing. Along with it, my restless heart fluttered. Lost in my staring, Ethan suddenly turned to look at me. Startled, I jerked my hand and knocked my phone to the floor with a thud. I instinctively bent down to pick it up, just as Ethan did the same. We maintained that bent position, looking up at each other. We weren't sitting far apart to begin with, and now in the same position looking up at each other, we were dangerously close. If I moved forward just a little, I could kiss him. I froze, nervously swallowing. A voice in my head was screaming for me to take advantage of the alcohol and kiss him. I could use being drunk as an excuse afterward, but rationality made me hesitate. Just as I wavered, Ethan seemed to lean forward intentionally. His lips touched mine, warm and soft. In that moment, everything around us fell silent. I stared at Ethan's eyes so close to mine, my mind blank. This gentle touch lasted several seconds. Ethan leaned down further, seeming to want to deepen the kiss, but Sam suddenly stood up and shouted, "Beautiful goal." Sam's shout was extremely sudden. Ethan and I, already feeling guilty, immediately separated. I don't know what Ethan was thinking, but I was blushing and didn't dare look up. Oh my God. I kissed my boss, and it was behind Sam's back. When Sam turned around, Ethan and I were already apart, sitting in our respective chairs. I was red-faced and secretly glanced at Ethan, but he was leaning back in his chair with one hand against his chin, looking thoughtful. He seemed completely normal. I was disappointed. Maybe for him, that was just an accidental kiss while drunk? My heart sank, and I turned to look at Sam instead, but was immediately stunned. Why? Are your eyes red? Sam's eyes were red, his long lashes blinking. The tall guy suddenly had a fragile quality. Sam sighed and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, grabbing his beer can and chugging it, then letting out a loud burp. It's nothing. That play was so bad it made my chest hurt. Sam opened another beer and sat back down. With his back to us, he was absorbed in the World Cup's intense atmosphere again. After a moment, Ethan glanced at me, and I immediately tensed up. When his gaze fell on me, I didn't even know where to put my hands. Flustered, I looked up at him too. Our eyes met. He was slightly frowning, his eyes deep with emotions I couldn't read. I could only guess from his furrowed brow whether he regretted that accidental kiss. I could only guess. I didn't dare ask. After 2 seconds of silence, Ethan handed me a box of snacks. Try this. It tastes good. I automatically accepted it. Thank you, boss. But when I looked down, I froze. This was a box of duck tongues. I don't know if I was overthinking, but I suddenly remembered that accidental kiss and couldn't help blushing. Maybe my reaction was too extreme because Ethan also realized what he'd given me and quickly took back the duck tongues, randomly switching to duck wings. I accepted them and thanked him quietly again. The atmosphere was awkward. This overtime session ended with this impromptu meal. The World Cup was halfway through when Sam had finished a row of beers. Crushing the last empty can, he turned to us. I'll clean up. Are you continuing to work overtime? I rubbed my temples, dizzy as hell, with no energy left for work. In my peripheral vision, Ethan seemed to glance at me. No need. We'll work overtime tomorrow instead. Ethan picked up his jacket from the chair back and got up to leave. I watched Ethan's departing figure with mixed feelings. I'd thought that after that inexplicable kiss, there might be some development between us. But Ethan didn't mention it at all and left so casually, not even politely asking if I needed a ride home. My heart, which had been floating from that kiss, now completely sank. I stood up and silently started collecting trash. After stuffing 2 empty bottles into the garbage bag, Sam pressed me back into my chair. Sam took the garbage bag, glancing at me. You're obviously drunk. Stop pretending and sit down. He bent down to clean the table, his voice low. Just wait for me. Sam worked efficiently, cleaning everything in 2 minutes and even wiping down my desk. Let's go. Sam stood in front of me, still holding 2 large garbage bags. I'll take you home. I nodded and followed him out of the office. After throwing away the trash, Sam hailed a taxi and automatically gave my home address, then voluntarily sat in the passenger seat. Throughout the ride, Sam kept his head turned toward the window, uncharacteristically quiet for someone usually so talkative. I was really dizzy and closed my eyes to rest until the taxi stopped at my apartment complex. Sam turned to call me softly. Emma? We're here. I got out unsteadily, and when I accidentally looked back, I suddenly froze. If I remembered correctly, that black Phaeton with license plate 625 belonged to Ethan, right? What was he doing at my place? I remembered his license plate clearly because I'd accompanied him on business trips and was with him when he got this plate number. Coincidentally, even though it was randomly assigned, the first number he drew ended in 625, my birthday. At the time, Ethan had paused for a few seconds, then said casually, "What a coincidence," and kept the plate number. Coming back to my senses, I was about to go ask, but Ethan in the car seemed not to see me and drove past without slowing down. I stood there until Ethan's car disappeared from view, then gradually came to my senses, so he was just passing by. Taking 2 steps back, I smiled at Sam. "I'm fine, heading home now. You should get home early too." Sam lived in the complex next door, very close to mine. Sam nodded, but called out as I was about to leave. "Emma." I turned back to see Sam staring at me, but when our eyes met, he quickly looked away. "Nothing. Text me when you get home." I nodded, said goodbye, and entered the complex. However, when I reached the corner, I looked back to see him still standing there watching me. When our eyes met, Sam waved from afar, then turned and left. The next day, Ethan unusually didn't come to the office. Ethan was famous for being a workaholic. Even with a high fever, he'd come to the office to handle things before going to the hospital for an IV. As the boss, he was even more diligent than old Zhang, who won our company's attendance award every year. The number of times he missed work could be counted on one hand. During lunch, everyone inevitably gossiped. Some said Ethan was sick. Others said the boss must be on a date. Then Hannah suddenly exclaimed, "Holy shit, is the boss getting married? Boss? Marriage?" These 4 words exploded in my mind. I belatedly turned around just as Hannah looked up at me. We locked eyes, and she swallowed hard, saying quietly, "I saw the boss's Twitter saying he's going to propose to his girlfriend and asking for proposal ideas online." Girlfriend. I turned to look out the window in shock, my mind a mess. All those brief moments with Ethan flooding back, tangled and unresolvable. Colleagues gathered around to look at the tweet, making various comments, when someone suddenly exclaimed, "I know who his girlfriend is. Last week when I was working late, I saw a beautiful woman come looking for the boss. They left together, looking quite intimate. When everyone asked about her appearance, he squinted with a gossipy expression. I didn't dare stare directly, just snuck a glance. Didn't see her face clearly, but incredible figure. Tch. After all that, he hadn't even seen her face." Everyone scoffed dismissively. I returned to my chair and absent-mindedly opened Ethan's Twitter. I procrastinated all afternoon, but suddenly found Ethan's private account. However, if not for certain specific event descriptions that confirmed this was definitely Ethan, I really wouldn't have believed it. Because Ethan's usual personality was cool and aloof, with unpredictable moods. The day before, he'd cornered me in the bathroom warning against dating, but the next day he could completely ignore employees making out in the parking lot. Including his main Twitter account, which was very cool, he rarely posted, occasionally sharing a photo with minimal captions. However, his private account was incredibly entertaining. He was totally a guy secretly crushing on someone. More specifically, a repressed guy secretly pining for someone. I even forgot to be sad, just shocked. So this was the real Ethan. Who would have thought? Everyone left various proposal suggestions on Ethan's main Twitter account. I worried that if I was the only one not commenting, people might notice my feelings, so I symbolically commented, "Take your girlfriend bungee jumping for the proposal, boss." Very romantic. I commented casually, but meant it. Bungee jumping proposals. That would require real love to say "I love you" while jumping, right? Just thinking about it seemed romantic. However, while everyone left dozens of comments, Ethan didn't reply to any. Instead, he posted in the company group chat, "Stop slacking off and get back to work." But what surprised me was that this weekend's company team building, instead of Ethan's usual dinner, drinks, and karaoke routine, became group bungee jumping. For this, everyone gave me reproachful looks. Clearly, among all the suggestions, Ethan chose my most unreliable proposal idea. I was torn between crying and laughing. So, I accidentally got to witness Ethan's proposal to his girlfriend. Especially yesterday evening, I personally saw a slender, long-haired woman come to our office and skillfully enter Ethan's office. Much later, Ethan came out with her. The woman followed Ethan slowly, wearing sunglasses, turning her head to carefully observe our office, very much like a lady of the house inspecting her domain. Maybe from guilt, when she looked my way, I instinctively looked down. When I looked up again, she left with Ethan. I sighed in relief, but couldn't help slowly picturing her in my mind. Slender and tall, and although sunglasses covered half her face, her visible features showed she was a standard beauty. However, Hannah had a different take when she found me. She hooked her arm around my neck, sighing meaningfully. "You don't know I was close enough to get a good look. Tisk. Although she's well maintained, you can still see time's traces. Her skin's a bit loose, she's definitely not young." I was skeptical. "Really?" "Of course." Hannah pursed her lips. The neck is the best way to assess a woman's condition and is easily overlooked. I looked carefully. She's definitely much older than Ethan. Get it? Hannah raised an eyebrow meaningfully, then was called away by the manager for work assignments. I sat in my chair, lost in thought. So, Ethan really found a girlfriend much older than him? Remembering that woman's expensive clothing, my heart sank. Could Ethan have found an older sugar mama? Weekend. Ethan posted in the company group requiring everyone to attend a bungee jumping venue in the city. Missing it meant immediate termination. Even during important company meetings, Ethan had never been this serious. Seems he really cared about that old rich woman. Old rich woman was the nickname I gave Ethan's fiancée in my head. I thought sourly that maybe someday Ethan would discover she was actually old and faded, then end this money-based relationship. But even if he left the old rich woman, he still had that girl he was secretly crushing on. I arrived early and waited at the bungee jumping site for everyone, mindlessly scrolling through Ethan's private account. I just didn't know who exactly was the girl he was crushing on. His descriptions were repressed and cryptic, impossible to figure out. However, I waited and waited, but no colleagues came. Only Ethan arrived. For bungee jumping, this guy was still wearing a business suit. Ethan walked slowly toward me, impeccably dressed in a suit with even his tie perfectly knotted. Every detail seemed carefully groomed, criminally handsome. I stared, slightly mesmerized, but quickly snapped back to reality, hurriedly standing up and dusting off my pants, making awkward conversation. "Boss, maybe I came too early." "You're not early, they're late." Ethan checked his watch. "Let's go." "Go?" I was confused. "Where?" Ethan glanced at me and said coolly, "Bungee jumping." I was completely stunned. "Just the two of us?" "Yes." I stared at him blankly, my not very bright brain struggling to process. "But your fiancé isn't here yet." Ethan stopped mid-step and looked down at me, frowning slightly. "Fiancé?" I nodded, describing cryptically, "That slightly older lady who came to the office looking for you." Ethan stopped walking, pinching the bridge of his nose, his voice low and seemingly helpless. "That's my mother." My mother. I was shocked, speechless by those two words. After a long moment, I managed to stammer, "Auntie looks so young." Ethan glanced at me without speaking, instead grabbing my wrist and heading toward the bungee jumping area. I was surprised, understanding, ecstatic, and also weak-kneed. "Actually bungee jump? Please spare me." I quickly grabbed his wrist, stopping. "Boss, just the two of us. Bungee jumping?" "Yes." Ethan stopped and turned to look at me, his expression serious and sincere. "Didn't you say you liked bungee jumping proposals?" I thought about it and felt that emotions arising between life and death are most moving. Hearing him mention life and death made my knees even weaker. I quickly tried to dissuade him. I only suggested that because I thought you were proposing to another woman. I wouldn't dare bungee jump. I trailed off, seeing Ethan quietly watching me. I thought he'd heard me and was about to change his mind, but after a few seconds, he suddenly smiled softly. So, Emma, you finally understand I'm proposing to you? I froze completely, then blushed. How did we suddenly get to this point? Of course, I understood no matter how slow I was, I should realize Ethan was proposing to me. I was weak-kneed, partly from shyness, partly from fear. I was about to persuade him to give up bungee jumping when Ethan tightened his grip on my wrist and gently touched my head with his other hand. Don't be afraid, I'm here. Those few words actually calmed me down. Ethan looked serious, with a different kind of charm. When our eyes met, the sincerity in his gaze inexplicably put me at ease. He held my wrist and led me to the bungee platform. While getting fitted for equipment, I swallowed nervously and glanced down at the height. My knees went weak again. Boss. I clutched his sleeve tightly. Just propose directly. Let's skip the jumping. No? Ethan frowned slightly, looking extremely serious. We've come this far. Be brave. He was actually telling me to be brave. Before I could argue, he pressed something round and hard into my hand. I looked down. It was a diamond ring. A large diamond that definitely wasn't what some celebrity called worthless chips, sparkling blindingly in the sunlight. I stared in shock and looked up at him. Ethan turned his head away, his earlobes suspiciously red. For you. His voice was low and rushed. Pretty expensive. Wear it properly, don't drop it during the jump. I stared at the diamond ring in my palm, unconsciously stroking it with my finger. So this was Ethan's proposal? Pretty expensive. Wear it properly. Could he be any more casual? Before I could complain, staff were already urging us onto the jumping platform. My heart clenched as I quickly put on the ring. The next moment, Ethan grabbed my wrist. He turned to look at me, lips curving slightly with rare humor. Don't be afraid. With that, he led me onto the platform. Emma. He said my name softly. Have I ever mentioned that our names are perfect together? Standing on a platform dozens of meters high, my eyes involuntarily looked down. I had no mental capacity to answer his question. I could only perfunctorily shake my head. However, Ethan's grip on my wrist tightened. Actually, I was initially amazed by our names, Ethan Walker and Emma Parker. They seemed naturally paired, so I called you to my office to see what the girl with this name looked like. Despite being scared, weak-kneed, curiosity got the better of me, and I couldn't help asking softly, So, what did you discover after seeing me? Ethan smiled. Pretty cute girl, small and petite, very fair skin. Not the stunning type, but very pleasant to look at. Most importantly, a bit silly. The first time you entered my office, you were so nervous you tripped over your own feet and nearly face-planted. The last word, flat, Ethan swallowed when he caught my gaze. He touched his nose and summarized. Anyway, pretty cute, and the type that gets cuter the more you know her. I listened quietly, both amused and exasperated. So, the airheaded sweet girl Ethan described on his private Twitter was actually me. Before I could reflect further, we were told to prepare for jumping. Staff announced this, instantly snapping me back to reality. I took a deep breath, but glancing at the ground below still made my legs weak. Ethan stood in front of me, gently stroking my head. If you're scared, hold on to me. After hesitating, I forgot about being shy and tightly wrapped my arms around his waist. I thought Ethan would shout, "I love you," and jump with me in his arms, asking midair if I'd marry him. However, reality seemed quite different from imagination. We stood there forever with neither of us daring to jump, until staff finally pushed us off. Then, The valley echoed with Ethan's screams. He'd acted so cool before jumping, telling me to hold onto him if scared, but when we actually jumped, he clung to me like an octopus. Besides the rushing wind, all I heard were Ethan's screams. I couldn't understand how that famously cool, unpredictable boss could scream himself hoarse during bungee jumping. However, there was something touching throughout his screaming. Ethan didn't forget to propose. Emma, marry me. I wanted to laugh, but opening my mouth just filled me with wind. I quickly pressed my lips together and silently hugged him back. This version of Ethan seemed pretty cute too. At least compared to his usual aloof, stubborn boss persona, he had much more human warmth. After bungee jumping, Ethan was completely disheveled. Probably from nerves, a button had popped off his suit, his tie was loose and crooked, and his carefully styled hair was a mess. Dissatisfied, he used his phone screen to tidy up briefly, muttering defensively. If you hadn't suggested bungee jumping in your comment, I definitely would have chosen a romantic proposal. I was also checking my appearance on my phone. My hair was messy too, not much better than his. I regretted it too. If I'd known he was proposing to me, I never would have suggested bungee jumping. How embarrassing, two people shrieking while tied together with rope, yelling through a proposal. Just thinking about it was mortifying. However, Ethan didn't seem embarrassed. After bungee jumping, I discovered he'd actually arranged for a drone to record our entire experience. He called it capturing beautiful moments. I didn't need to see the video, just imagining our terror-distorted faces and those ghostly howls didn't feel beautiful at all. But that evening, Ethan quietly posted an official announcement on social media. It was a 10-second video clip from our bungee jumping footage. In the recording, I had my head buried tightly against his neck. Ethan looked up at the drone camera, smiled slightly, then said with a trembling voice, "Emma, marry me." At the video's end, I lifted my head, face pale with fright, but still weakly replied, yes. Epilogue. My boss Ethan and I got engaged. Yes. We skipped the dating phase entirely, from mutual secret crushes to engagement overnight. After that inexplicable kiss that night, my repressed boss finally changed his ways, skipping courtship to buy a ring and propose directly. Then he announced it that evening and showed up at my house the next day with gifts, claiming he was asking for my hand. The speed was breathtaking. When asked, Ethan coolly replied, "I'd been holding back too long, couldn't go slow anymore." Of course, my parents were absolutely delighted. These two had been desperate to marry me off and found Ethan perfect in every way. My family hierarchy changed from mom dog dad me to Ethan mom dog dad me. I was still ranked last. My romance with Ethan started remarkably smoothly. Overnight, I transformed from an unremarkable employee secretly crushing on her boss to the boss's lady. Under Ethan's announcement post, there were unanimous fake congratulations, except for drunk Hannah, who broke formation, commenting, "I could see the chemistry between you two ages ago. Without me as wingman, could the boss have won his beauty?" Because of this comment, everyone feared for Hannah, including Hannah herself, after sobering up. However, Hannah sneakily deleted the comment the next day. And not only did Ethan not cause trouble for her, she got another raise. This raise's reasoning was simple. Hannah cared about the boss's personal life and the company. Seeing Hannah's 2 raises, colleagues couldn't sit still and boldly complained in the group chat about Ethan's favoritism. However, Ethan's reaction was remarkably calm. Facing complaints, he said only, "Anyone who helps me appease my wife gets a raise." Good Lord! With one sentence from the CEO, I instantly became the company's protected species. If I so much as frowned, someone immediately rushed over with care and concern. This was no way to live. However, if we're talking about incidents, there was one the day Ethan brought gifts to ask for my hand. Sam coincidentally arrived with chicken, duck, and fish. When Sam came, my parents were busily preparing food in the kitchen. Hearing the door, I went to answer and saw Sam carrying large and small bags. Sam smiled foolishly, even raising the plastic bags. "Emma, this is free-range chicken I had someone bring from the countryside. I heard the meat's really firm. I brought it specially for your parents to try." He couldn't finish because he spotted Ethan coming out of the bathroom. After a few seconds of shock, Sam smiled awkwardly. "Emma, your boss is here too." Ethan and I exchanged glances. After a moment's silence, Ethan walked over and welcomed Sam inside. "I've already proposed to Emma." Sam's hand holding the bags froze. After a long pause, he smiled wryly. "That's wonderful. When are you planning the wedding?" He smiled lightly, gaze dropping to the floor where no one could read his expression. Throughout, he never asked if I'd accepted Ethan's proposal. He seemed to assume I would. Of course, with Ethan appearing at my house, the result was obvious. I wanted to say something, but opening my mouth, I felt only guilty and couldn't speak. Sam had pursued me for years. I'd refused him many times and clearly stated he wasn't my type. But each time he was rejected, he'd just smile and say he understood. He just wanted to be good to me. A little better. Before I found my other half. He knew my address, rented in the neighboring complex, and frequently brought things to my parents from chicken, duck, fish, and vegetables to rice, flour, oil, and various gifts. My neighbor, Mrs. Liu, often marveled that her daughter's husband of 5 years wasn't this thoughtful. Each time, when I couldn't refuse, I'd send back equivalent gifts to Sam. But while monetary debts could be repaid, emotional debts couldn't. Over the years, though Sam was persistent, he never crossed lines or used his feelings to bind or constrain me. As he said, he just tried his best to be good to me. That's exactly why I felt so guilty. Just then, my parents emerged from the kitchen and saw Sam, both pausing. "Sam, come in." Mom recovered first, beckoning him. "I made your favorite braised ribs today. Stay for dinner." Sam paused, then looked up and smiled. "No thanks, Aunt. I just came to bring this chicken. It's countryside, free range, really good." He set down the 2 large bags. "I have things to do. Won't disturb your dinner." "Uncle, Aunt, I'll go first." Sam nodded to Ethan and me, then headed downstairs. Ethan and I exchanged glances. He patted my shoulder, voice low. "Go ahead. You need to be clear with him. I'll wait at home." I chased downstairs and cornered Sam at the building entrance. When I caught up, Sam's eyes were red. Seeing me, he paused, then vigorously rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand, smiling. "The wind's too strong, got something in my eye." But it was clearly sunny, with no wind at all. I sighed. "Sam, I know." He sighed, hands behind his head, looking up at the sun. "I knew from the beginning that I wasn't your type and we wouldn't work out. So, from the start, I never planned to pester you. I just wanted to be as good to you as possible before you found someone else." The sunlight was too bright. Sam squinted. "Actually, I was just being selfish, not wanting to have regrets." I frowned watching him, unable to say a word. I didn't know what to say anyway. Anything would sound hollow. But Sam didn't seem to need me to speak. He smiled and continued talking to himself. "Actually, don't let my joking about being your family's son-in-law fool you. I never really thought we'd have a future." After pausing, Sam turned to look at me and smiled gently. He actually had very attractive features when not goofing around. He was definitely handsome, especially those eyes, large and bright, with starlight when he smiled gently. "Don't worry." Sam smiled and patted my head. "I'm fine. Actually, long ago, I prepared myself for you to find love. I always thought I was ready and could handle it calmly, could hook arms with the guy and tell him coolly to treat Emma well, or I'd come back to steal you away. Taking a deep breath, Sam laughed softly. I never thought when this day actually came, I'd chicken out and just run away with red eyes. Sam, I began quietly. You're really wonderful, truly. We're just not compatible. Trust me, you'll definitely meet a girl who likes you back and is perfect for you. Yeah, I know. Sam raised an eyebrow. Okay, no need for comforting words. I'm not that fragile. Everything just happened so suddenly. I didn't react in time. After a few seconds of silence, Sam suddenly rolled up his sleeve, revealing a black rubber band on his wrist. Taking off the band, Sam handed it to me. I found this on your floor and secretly kept it for years. Now, I'm returning it. Smiling, he said, actually, from the first time I saw your boss, I could tell you two liked each other. Especially you. Sam placed the rubber band in my palm. I know that look too. Well, you only get those longing eyes when you really like someone. I observed him too, though. His personality's a bit twisted. He genuinely likes you. I looked down at the black rubber band in my palm, lost in thought. Suddenly, Sam leaned forward slightly and said quietly, I won't come around as often anymore, but call me anytime if you need anything. Let me tell you a secret. TVs reflect light. Standing up straight, he smiled and said, So I actually guessed you'd end up together, just didn't expect it to happen so fast. Sam waved at me. If that guy treats you badly, call me anytime. With that, he turned and left, walking steadily, though not fast, disappearing from the complex under my gaze. I silently recalled his words. TVs reflect light. So, his sudden shout that night wasn't actually because of some goal. It was because he saw us kissing in the TV's reflection. The end.